This week on Tech Uncapped, Abdalla from MindMyMind joins me to talk personality science, building companies from a young age, life after selling a business, and whether hustle culture is actually worth it. So let's jump in. You started out as an entrepreneur quite early. Could you tell a bit about how you got into becoming an entrepreneur first and how your first business fared?
Yeah, sure. I started very, very early when I think I was 13 when I started selling, I was buying things on Alibaba and trying to sell it on the Danish eBay called Den Blå Avis. And I was dabbling with a bunch of different stuff and tried stock trading, tried blogging online, all kinds of different adventures. But I would say the first, more mature entrepreneurship was when I joined a startup. When I was in high school, I think I was 18 years old, and the third year of high school in Denmark. And there I joined. So I had this thing where I was reading a lot, and I really wanted to make it in the business world. So I was reading all these business books, trying all these side projects next to school. And then I figured out I was very good at analyzing stuff and writing, making complicated Excel sheets and all that stuff. But I was super awkward when I had to talk to people. I couldn't. I remember I had one meeting in one of my early jobs, and I had to kind of pitch what we were doing, and I was just sweating almost like a meme. And then I don't remember if I heard a podcast or read a book. There was some guy who said that he recommends everybody to take a 1-month job as a telemarketing salesperson and doing cold calling. And then I started in a call center called Call Force, and it was this very, very small call center, and it was basically because one of my classmates in high school, he was working there. And he told he had just started there some weeks earlier, and then I heard this thing about it's a good idea to just try cold calling for 30 days. So I asked my friend if he could get me in or get me a job interview, and he really and his reaction, it says it all. When I asked him, he was like, "Sure, but just so you know, Abdalla, this, you have to bring your own computer, you have to bring your own headset. It's super scrappy." He almost tried to pitch me not to take the job. I was like, it's perfect, just get me an interview and I'll go there. And it was out in this place in Denmark called Søborg, which is kind of this industrial area outside of Copenhagen. And I go there, and it takes quite a time to get out there with public transport, and I get there, and I remember I had to find the address, and I go to the address, and you go down a path, and then to the right there's a brothel, and to the left there's the call center. It was a really cheap rent, I assume. And I went up there, and there I started selling electricity subscriptions. It was they were selling the products of Blue Energy, which was one of the first providers of you would say green electricity as a subscription in Denmark, and that really taught me a lot about how to call up a random person and tell them why they should switch their electricity cost. Most of the time, the price might be was maybe a bit more expensive than the people were used to paying, or maybe just the same. And at that point, electricity prices were pretty low, and more than 2/3 of your bill was just taxes. So the financial incentive to switch your subscription was non-existent. So it was pure based on values. People wanted to support the environment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that really, I was just calling up people and asking them about the electricity, and I thought that, okay, if I can learn to call people up and sell them electricity, I can sell anything. And that was kind of my logic going in. And there I joined pretty early. When I joined there was that call center ended up merging with the electricity company, Blue Energy, and we ended up, and when I started, I think the company like had revenues of like 10k euros a month, something like that. And when I ended, it was hundreds of millions of Danish kroner every year.
Wow.
So I was kind of with them from the beginning, and I ended up doing pretty much everything from being a salesperson to being a sales trainer to being a sales leader to doing business development and make partnerships until I eventually ended as a CTO. And it was kind of came out of that I was doing business development, and what that meant in that company was basically make partnerships and like figuring out how can we launch new product verticals, or how can we do something that is differentiated when your core product is like pretty, like it's pretty commoditized. And then I pretty much figured out if you want to do anything at scale with tens of thousands of customers, you need to automate it, or else it will be very tiring. And we didn't have any developers in-house, and each time I was calling a development agency and I was like, I want you to help with this, can you do this in 1 week? They were basically just laughing about me because everybody was so busy and it was super expensive and we had no budget. So I thought, okay, it cannot be that difficult, let me just learn to code myself. And then I started taking these coding courses to and from work. I had like 1 hour to work with the boss every day. And then I learned to program, and I really had this, I was really fascinated by it and found it very useful, and yeah, that kind of how I ended up there. And that company got acquired twice, first by a private equity firm in London, and then again by another, and then afterwards another company took over control in a Swedish company, and that after the second transition, I was like, okay, it has been a very nice journey. It's been fun going through all this, but I think it's time to something new.
Mm. Yeah. So I mean, that's quite the journey. Like to summarize, there's like many great tips in there. Like the first one, to just go and join a call center to get used to pitching and selling. I mean, it reminds me a bit of the Wolf of Wall Street, John Belfort, sell me this pen type of thing, where you just go out there and you sell something that you might not really care too much about, or it's a commodity even you're talking about here, but then you still go and do it, and you get your training in on how to present from people. I think that's a very cool approach. And then on top of that, then you just go and crawl your way up from sitting in the scrappy call center next to a brothel to then becoming a CTO and taking up coding. It's a very self-taught journey, you could say.
Yeah, for sure. It has been very interesting, and I very much believe like also that I think the reason why I was so drawn to the startup, like very chaotic environment, is I felt I learned so much. I remember after, because I was there, I was in the call center for the first month, and then after 1 month, my boss he took me to the side. He said like they were kind of worried that I worked so much for a part-time employee. And you don't need to work that much, but for me, I told them that, you know what, I feel like I learned more here for like in 1 month than I did like 2 years in business high school, because we learned. I went to this business high school called Niels Brock in Copenhagen, and they had this, I don't know how even you say it. They had they have different departments, you could say, and I went to they had one they called the elite, which is basically you can have more at a high level than you usually can. And there I was like super ambitious and very excited to learn a lot, but I felt it was pretty good, and they had some practical things as well, but it doesn't compare to being in the real world, talking to customers, building stuff, hiring people, training people.
Yeah. I mean, that was my own experience from going to business school as well, is there was barely anything that was actually applicable in the real world. Sure, you got a nice theoretical background, but a lot of it was already outdated or just not usable at all. Of course, there were some things that taught you a good framework, but yeah, it's that was also my experience. That I would have probably been better off just go out there, just go and do it, learn it the hard way. But that's also a lesson learned, so to say.
Yeah. I think that's most people I talk to in the business world who have been to business high school or to business school afterwards. It's more or less the same story, right?
Yeah, I think so. So, and you mentioned like Blue Energy was exited twice. Did you, throughout that journey, also get equity as an employee?
Yeah, so there was after the first exit, I got some shares because the new owner, they wanted to make sure like the key employees were motivated, and they made this employee share program.
Yeah. Okay. And so this was kind of the foundation for when you then went on to the next stage, which was to found Medley VC. Is that correct?
You could say, I mean, like I didn't get any. Of course, I got a very good salary, and I had like a CTO salary at a very young age. I think I was 21 or 22 or something like that. So there I had some savings. But it wasn't like for me the Blue Energy journey was more about learning. It wasn't like a meaningful financial upside, so to say.
All right.
But Medley, it was more. I started that with Matthias, who was the chief commercial officer of Blue Energy, and then with Alan, who was the founder, CEO and founder of Blue Energy. So I kind of got that network, and we've been working together for so many years that, and like when you work together for so many years, you build trust, you build shared understanding, you build like you know how each other operate, you know each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And that it was kind of the foundation to launch Medley, you could say.
Yeah. And then the green energy that you then founded through Medley came, or how did that come about? That was one of your first ventures, right? Inside of Medley.
Yeah. So what happened is me and Matthias, we were kind of thinking, okay, we are done with it's been a fun journey at Blue, but we were at a stage where it was maybe a bit too corporate, too slow, too boring. And back then, energy was not so hyped and sexy like it is now. It was super difficult to find talented people who wanted to join because energy was so boring and prices had been stable forever. So we both had pretty long termination notices because we were on management contracts. So we decided to say, okay, let's quit our jobs. And I think I had 6 or 7 months, and Matthias, he had 8 or 9 months. And then we had to say, okay, let's quit, and then let's figure out what to do. We were sure we would find out something, and then we ended up talking to Alan at some point, and we made Medley. And when we started Medley, we had this abstract concept. We thought, okay, let's build companies. We think that's fun, and invest in promising companies. And this was in 2021. So that was when it was like peak venture hype cycle. And when we had companies coming in and pitching, the valuations were pretty steep and a bit too steep for us. And then we thought, okay, let's just build something ourselves. And one of our first ideas was to build like almost like a bank to finance green energy projects, and then to lend out money to green energy projects. And we were researching that, and we were figuring out how to do that, and going to the Danish supervisory financial authority. And then we figured out, okay, that the lead time for that would take a long time. Yep. And then we thought, okay, what else could we do? And Alan, he had been in energy. He had founded Blue Energy, and before that, he had built one of the biggest energy solar companies in Denmark. So he had a lot of experience within that, and he kind of saw there was some shifts in the market going on. And then we thought, okay, if we want to be a bit practical, we could build a company within that space. And we also noticed it was super complex. For example, if you wanted a heating pump or if you wanted solar cells as a consumer, you had to figure out what an inverter was. You had to talk to different specialists. You had to like manage the entire process yourself. It was quite opaque, and it was not like super consumer friendly. And then we built Easy Green, which was basically you go into your website, you put in your address, and then we figure out everything you need. We figure out which kind of solar cells will fit to for your house, how many panels can there be, and then we can do everything from A to Z, so you don't have to worry about anything, and you just have your one point of contact. And that really, really resonated, and it grew pretty crazy in the first year.
Yeah.
And then I think after 18 months, I don't remember the exact, and like 18 months or so after we started selling, it got acquired by a Danish energy company.
So within 2 years of basically you starting it up, you had already had an exit there.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you exit a company?
It was, I was not so much in the trenches in Easy Green, but of course they were sitting at the Medley office, and I helped hire some early employees, give some guidance on technical strategy, and I was actually busy with some of the other portfolio companies, so it was not my main thing, but I was very proud and very. It was kind of like validation, because I think we had the sense that we know we are pretty good at what we do, and we just need to let's get Medley started and show the first validation to show the world. And so first I was like, it was kind of this big milestone, and financially that was also pretty meaningful for me. And then it kind of got from this pride to almost like a depression, you could say, or like a very depressive, because then suddenly my mind had always been on working on business, achieving goals, going this different financial route, and then suddenly you have a big amount of cash, and then what? Then what? Like when you reach some of the financial goals, then what's the point? What's the purpose of life? You could say.
Right. Yeah, I mean I think that's probably a side that people don't think of when they think about entrepreneurship, when they hear about these big exits and the glamorous life that you think it will bring, is that it's, as you said, might bring a lot of questions or even like depressive feelings because what now? What do I do now? I've achieved my goal.
Yeah, exactly. And I did all the things that I thought would make me happy. So I started dating a pretty girl. I bought a fancy car. Or at least a fancy car, and it didn't really work. It didn't work.
No.
It was not that. That was not what. And also, it was kind of that disappointment, because I was thinking, I'll just reach this, and then I'll be happy. And then unfortunately, that's not how the world works.
No, giant anticlimax to finally get what you thought you wanted, and then finding out, oh, maybe that wasn't it after all. But was this what led you to towards MindMyMind? Because that's a very big departure from working with energy towards suddenly working with personal development and mental health.
Yeah, so I had some so what happened is, like the months before the exit, and even like a year before, I could see, okay, this is really a rocket ship, and also it was not like a traditional venture play. It was actually earning cash every month while it was growing. So I was like, okay, if I just calculate my expected dividend based on our profits, that's pretty meaningful already there. And I started to I have some friends who built some meaningful businesses and that have exited them or sold secondaries to a point where they retired pretty early. And I was talking to them, and they all talked about this very spiritual stuff, I would say, about going in and about finding your inner purpose. And Some of them were pretty much into personality types, and there I started to talk to them, and I figured out that it kind of led me to my entire, like you could say, personal journey into kind of figuring out what is underneath all this accomplishment stress, or and this led me eventually to personality types. And for me it was very useful. So my story with personality types is, first I went online when I first heard about it. It was years before the exit. I went to this website and I got a personality type, and then I was typed as INTP, which is one. There are 16 different types. This is one of the types, and I was like, whoa! And some of it resonated, and I was like, I bought the report and I went very deep into it, and I bought a book about it, like about that specific personality type, and I was pretty sure I was that type. And then I tried to design my life around it. It didn't really work. And then
yeah, I tried that test you mentioned there as well, along with a lot of other ones, and I found that one to be a bit too stereotypical and not really saying too much about yourself as a person. But yeah, but go on.
Yeah, and then I met my co-founder Thomas before, like just through a common friend, and I was telling him like he was also into personality types, and he had really been studying it. He had been living. There had been like him and like 3 or 4 guys had been really just almost spending like full time for some years just studying the theory behind personality types. So they were really into it. And I met him the first time, and I told him very proud, I'm like, I'm INTP because of this and this. And he had like noticed me doing the dinner, and he was like, INTP, running these businesses, it doesn't fit. And then he asked me some questions, and he had observed me during the night or during the evening. And then he told me, he thinks I'm that type, another type. And when he gave me the description, that was really spot on. And there I felt heard and seen. And for me, and then I started looking into that type, which is INTJ, and that really resonated. So for me, that was kind of my, you could say, wow moment, where I'm like, okay, there's some truth to this. And this eventually, then Thomas, he had this idea, because AI was on the rise at that point, and he really been looking into personality types, and then he had this idea, he wanted to do something within that space, and we started talking, and that was like shortly after exit, and it was more like, you could say, like brainstorming, pretty high level stuff. And that eventually led down to the path of MindMyMind, because we saw like all the tests out there, they were pretty inaccurate, and then we really wanted to create a test that can get you right.
All right, so that's how you got to MindMyMind.
Yeah.
Try and describe a bit more what MindMyMind is, what it does, and like what it does better in terms of these personality tests that are currently not very accurate.
Yes, so we are pretty early still, and we have a product out. We've had out since April last year, and we've already built one model that is pretty accurate, but still pretty simple. We just finished a major research report that we are releasing here in March, so that we'll give much more context into like how accurate is the types and how accurate is this personality types. But yeah, we have an app where you download it, you get your personality types, you get some pointers about your strengths, your weaknesses, what might drain you, what might energize you, and then you can compare to your friends as well. And what we learned, we've been, I would say, like very research heavy. So really just been investing a lot into research and have a pretty big research team, both like psychologists, personality type experts, AI experts, just really like building and making sure we build the right thing. And this has kind of been one path we've had. Then we also have this, you could say, like AI companion in the app that listens to you. So it's kind of like a non-judgmental listener. So and then we are basically still pretty early figuring out exactly like how to direct the product, but we have some early indications of some super users, some product market fit, but still pretty early on the journey, I would say.
Who is your main ICP, your main client type for this type of app?
So we thought about multiple use cases. I could see how it could be super useful at work. We've been using it a lot internally because we know each other's types and okay, this, for example, don't make me do admin stuff, don't make me do bookkeeping. I will be super drained and I will probably not do as good a job as somebody who is more detail oriented than me. I'm more of a big picture, vision, strategy, but can also be super practical. And what drains me, for example, is these admin things where I know if I have an admin task or detail oriented task, I should give it to one of my colleagues who are either ISTJ or ESTJ, because they will do it properly and they will love it. So that's like a very concrete use case, and we built also a B2B platform now that is in beta, and we have a few users on that. So we're kind of figuring out the ideal use case and seeing from our app, people that use it in different ways. So some people really like this emotional support, and other people more like the MBTI crowd, so to say, has been using it to kind of dug into the details about the different types and understanding them, comparing to their friends, reading about different types to figure out which one are they. So it's
But what would you say is the most hard part about getting this right? How to get this personality science? Where does the inaccuracies appear? Where are the most tricky parts to figure out?
I would say, so if you look at the tests out there now, most of them, they're based on multiple choice, including ourselves, the one we have live now. And multiple choice has shown not to be that accurate because people, they kind of answer how they feel that given day. Am I introverted? Am I extroverted? Do I like to be around people? Do I not like to be around people? Whatever questions you might have can also be very dependent on your mood and not necessarily on your personality traits. So I think like this entire format of having a multiple choice or having this is not so accurate. Again, what I've seen is when I talk to a personality type expert, they kind of see me over a longer time usually, and also they can see like body language. They see the way I speak. Do I speak very much to the point? Do I speak abstract? Am I like more abstract? Am I more like you would say like more talk more about what is there, what is actually real? Do I like to go on tangents or talk about theoretical frameworks? And also in the way you talk, like do you give a lot of details, or do you just go more to the point and are good at summarizing stuff? So what we build in a new version we have in that is also coming out soon is it's basically, it will figure out your personality type based on games. So you play some games, and then we can detect based on the way you play that it tells you something about you. And I would say the most difficult part is basically making an accurate AI that can figure out your personality type. That is for sure
So you are applying AI to this, but how are you using AI with this?
So we're building our own models to detect your personality type. Even the one we have live now is based on some machine learning and based on how you answer your questions. And then the other one that we have that is much more accurate, that is still in lab. And maybe by the time this podcast go out, it will already be live. I don't know when the episode will be out.
But probably in a week or so.
Okay, so then maybe not. Maybe it's 1 or 2 weeks, a few weeks after this goes live. But it's basically how do you how do you encode behavior into personality traits? How do you figure out your actual behavior? How do I just notice how you click through the app? Because the way you click through the app tells a lot about you. If you're pretty impatient, want to get to the point quickly, you're probably not so detail-oriented, for example.
Yeah, so that's basically, and you build that into the game then as well, and you know this, if this person does this or this, that applies.
Yeah, there's this, but then there's also the thing about no test is perfect. So we also want to kind of, and I feel we still need to do a better job of this, but we want to educate people more about what is, like, how accurate are the tests, because we also don't, basically I believe that personality types, it can be used to connect people and make, like, increased trust. For example, if you're at work and you understand each other, or if you're with your romantic partner or with your friend or parents or kids or whatever. But it can also be used to judge people. It can also be used to say, you're in this box, that's why you say this. And I would like it to be more connecting than judging. So this is also something I would love to make clear in the app. So it's not just about we figure out your type. We show, for example, in the new flow, you will have a game. We will tell you how sure we are about that specific part of your personality. And then we will explain it and let you choose, basically, because you probably know the best. What resonates.
But everybody that are doing this game, they will know they're being tested for their personality. So it's not like it's like undercover, that it's like a game and then you're just collecting data.
No. It will be very clear. It will be you start with a game. We tell you the purpose of the game. We tell you how to play the game, and we let you play. So we make it very transparent. I'm not sure the undercover way will be. Yeah, I don't think it will fit our values. I think it's more about, I believe more on just being transparent and open. Yeah.
I get that. In the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned a bit that your boss told you to maybe relax a bit more, that you're working too much, even though you're just in part-time. So that kind of brings me to want to ask you the question about hustle culture. If you are pro hustle culture or you're against hustle culture.
So I can just tell, as I don't want to give advice, but I can just share my own journey. I started being very, very, I ate all the hustle culture stuff. I was very much into it. I was working full-time while studying full-time in high school. So I was usually going to, this also ended up being a problem, but I think you're supposed to be at school from like 8 to 2 o'clock. And what I usually did, I went to school in the morning, then after school I went to work. I was at work at 4, I worked from 4 to 9 in the evening. Then I took the bus home. I'll be home maybe around 10, and then I would sleep, and then I would go to school the next morning. And often I would be so exhausted that I didn't even. I skipped the first hour of school, and that became into a problem, especially at the few months before I had to graduate. They pulled me in for a talk that it was not okay, and I think they had this absence percentage. It was way too high. And I had to convince them not to throw me out, and it worked. But I was basically working went to school from 8 to 2, then going to work till 9 in the evening. Then weekends I was teaching sales training courses. So there I was usually teaching 7 to 8 hours Saturday and Sunday. So that was kind of my routine. Crazy, I would say. And then after I graduated, I took 1 year off. And there I just went full crazy workaholic mode, 9 to 9 every day, Monday till Saturday usually.
So basically the 669 culture that Harry Steppings and so on are promoting, that's the way to get ahead in Europe.
Exactly. And I did that, and I was very proud. I didn't take a vacation for 2 or 3 years in a row. I didn't take a single day off. Even every public holiday, I was still working. and I always thought everybody was lazy for not doing the same. So that was kind of where I came from. So I very much done that. What happened is I ended up gaining a ton of weight. I gained like 30 or 40 kilos. So I'm not sure that was so healthy for me. And I'm not sure the decisions I made were the best one for me or for the company, because it can be a good way if you work a lot. It can be a good way to learn something, but I'm also just thinking, okay, what is the marginal utility? Because when I'm thinking back, and for example, I talk to Matthias sometimes, and we laugh about it, and we thought, okay, there was some learnings from that period, but there was also like some critique, because imagine you've been working yourself like crazy. When you are there at the office on a Saturday on hour number 10 to 12, like how good decisions do you make? Do you just do stuff that you could have outsourced? Do you do stuff not efficiently? I know there's a ton of research about this. That there was one, I don't remember who made the study, but I can found it, that I read that once you get over 50 hours a week, there's basically no marginal utility in working more than that if you do that on average.
So what you're saying is, if you work more than 50 hours on a regular basis, you're basically working for no good reason.
Exactly.
There's no productivity in working above those 50 hours.
Yeah, this was what this study says. I don't know how they measured productivity, because especially in knowledge work, it might be difficult. But I could, just from my personal experience, now I try to be more balanced. I feel I make much better decisions when I'm balanced, when I don't work myself like crazy. And especially, you could even say, for example, Naval Ravikant, he talks a lot about taste, like that. It's your taste that is important, because choosing to work on the right thing or doing the right thing is much more important than just doing a lot of work. And you can say, especially in an age of AI, where actually doing the work gets cheaper and cheaper, what is differentiated is what you choose to build and what you choose not to build. So I would say, I personally believe that in an age where everybody is talking about quantity, probably better off focusing on quality. Also, if you believe, for example, the 80-20 rule, right? The 80-20 rule says 20% of the work generates 80% of the output.
Yeah.
Say if you just put in a lot of hours in your day, but you work on the 80% that only only generates 20%. So I would say it's better off that you spend more time on focusing and really just nailing those 20% and do that way better. And if you even try to apply the 80-20 rule to the 20% again, it gets even more crazy when you do the math. So I'm very much into balance. Live a balanced life. Have a sharp mind, especially in knowledge work. That I think you get. That's my personal experience.
I guess the counter argument on that one is, how do you actually know when you are in that zone of the 20% where you get all the 80% done? Like, that's, how do you get to that? When do you know? And I guess that's why there is that hustle culture, that a lot of it is just about grinding. Sometimes it's not about too much brain, but just about, getting shit done, right? And there can be a good argument for pushing through, doing sprints where it's just really grunt work that doesn't require a lot of thinking, when you have the direction, right? But I can also completely agree with you that, if my brain start turning up, I'll make bad decisions, and those decisions will then take me further away from my goal or not advance it. Then what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. I think you could lean into, you can be more deliberate in your choices, and I think figuring out the 20% might be the difficult part. I mean, for example, Elon Musk, he has this framework he has this 5-step process he describes for his companies, where he asks people to question the assumption. I don't remember them all in my head, but that was could say maybe that's one way of doing it. But also, I guess if you have mental clarity, for example, just a very specific thing, I'm working on improving retention in our app. I want to improve, because I think retention and usage might say, if you come back and use the app again you might like it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you might find it useful at least. Then think about, okay, what is the most, like, how do I achieve that? What is the most important thing to do that? I could go the route of just churning out a bunch of features. I could just say, okay, guys, now we just need to build these 8 features. Or I could also, or I could talk to customers. I could ask customers for feedback. I could really understand what is it that people try to achieve with the app, and then build some specific features that I think will help them with that specific outcome. I would say that could be one example. I think a lot of people, they get into that just churning out feature mode. But yeah, I guess based on whatever you work with, if you really sit down and think about it, I think you can kind of, for many cases, you can find out. For example, sales, there it might be difficult. If you just have, I can also see how the hustle or the intense period will be there, and they are still there sometimes if there's some emergency or something is some turbulence. But yeah, I think for most people, they might find a way to figure out, okay, what do I really believe will move the needle in whatever task I sit with.
Yeah. Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think I've also been there where I had very busy weeks working 70 hours and so on, but I think life is a marathon. Yes, there are sprints that needs to be done to achieve something, and that might be relevant for periods of your life. That might be relevant for periods inside of the project that you're working on. But if you do this like as the default, then you're gonna break down as a human. And I personally can feel it on my own body if I go and really do that more than the 50 hours you mentioned. Yeah, my mind start shutting down, and I don't really do good work after a while. So I don't believe in the Harry Stebbings promotion of the 996. I do think that it's okay when you need to do sprints and you really need to hit some deadlines, but there are very few people that can sustain that in the long run. Like Elon Musk is a strange example of that, where it's just like he doesn't know any other gear, right? But for most people, I don't think that's going to work, and I don't necessarily think that's going to take you to where you think you will get to in terms of success with your business and competitiveness, China versus US, if we take it all the way up on that stage. So yeah, you could say I probably mostly disagree with Harry Stebbings and that culture. But then again, like there's also this type of bias and fallacy. The people that are talking against it are almost always people that have done it and did get successful. The question is just if you didn't do it, would you still have been successful, right? Because you also see like Alexis Ohanian, he's also talking against the hustle culture that he also used to be promoting heavily, right? So you have that type of catch 22. If you didn't do it, would you have gotten the success you actually step into? Of course, with all of the issues that then followed with your with health and both mental and physical, you paid a price for it for sure. But yeah,
Yeah, I would say the counter argument for that, of course, I say, okay, I did it, I don't like it, now I do something else.
yeah,
But for example, you can also look at guys like the Basecamp guys, David Heinemann Hansen and Jason Fried. They run a hugely profitable business, and they wrote multiple books about it, and they've been pretty balanced from the get-go. There's also, for example, Patagonia, the founder, he wrote I think called like Let My People Go Surfing. But there's also like, there's a lot of these like and even in one of the book, it was I don't even remember the title, but one of Jason Fried and David Heinemann Hansen's books, they give some different examples of entrepreneurs who didn't do the crazy route, and still built very successful businesses. So I definitely think it's achievable.
and they did it from the scrappy entrepreneur state because, for instance, David Heinemann, he was already a successful entrepreneur, so the budget that he can actually insert to have other people do some of the work for him is probably different from a person who starts from ground zero, right? Like if you, Abdalla, looked at where you started in a very, modest setting, you cannot just hire people to do the stuff for you because you don't have the money, right?
He's a very, yeah, that's a good point. I think from David, from what I read in the books and I understand from his podcast is they started pretty like, I think it was 14 or 19 hours a week they were working on Basecamp from the beginning. So they didn't have, and they're very much into like, don't hire too fast, only hire when it's a pain.
Yeah.
And I really recommend his books. They're really good. But that's pretty much like anti-hustle culture. And that he's not only talking the talk, but also walk the walk. And they build, basically their entire argument with Basecamp is they are differentiated by building less, by deliberately avoiding feature bloat, building for a specific ICP, and making it simple, because most of like enterprise, like B2B SaaS tools, they kind of get bloated and uneasy to use. So yeah, they're one example I know on top of my head, and yeah. But they also, of course, they didn't go the venture route. They were also untraditional in the way they were profitable from the beginning. They built a huge business with hundreds of millions of dollars of ARR with, I think he says, like under 100 people. So it's a different way of operating.
Yeah.
And I also think what can happen if I had to like critique the venture world, which I'm a part of now, is sometimes this. I can imagine like this pressure on founders. For example, you raise a big round, you understand, okay, you need to reach this extremely ambitious growth goal by whatever date to raise the next round. So you just work yourself from the external expectations, because okay, you kind of have to please the investors in a sense, right? Because if you don't have a profitable business, if you cannot please your investors, you kind of go out of business because you need new investors to sustain the company.
Yeah.
And I think that puts a lot of pressure on people. And maybe the thing is that people just go like, okay, all crazy, like we need to reach this. And I think that's also one of the problems is in venture, because if you look at the stats, if you look at how many companies that raise a pre-seed, that goes to seed, that goes to Series A within a given time frame, there's of course the Lovables of the world that go, and 11 Labs that goes super quickly and grows like crazy, but for majority of companies, it doesn't go so quickly. Yeah. And it's a lot of, like with all that pressure imagine how many people that is, all the founders, the employees, that pressure that goes down the system. I think it's, I don't know how to solve it, but I think it could be something that we could do better as an industry to like really voice that pressure that is building and that unhealthiness with having too high growth expectations and how it trickles down into the ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the tough ones when you do that venture capital journey, that you have those relentless targets that you have to hit, which of course also pushes you to do more, but you have a runway, and if you don't hit those magic numbers, you won't get your next series of financing, and there's the whole liquidity preferences that might mean that you walk away with nothing as a founder. So whereas, as you mentioned, businesses where they don't take that journey and they run with profits, they don't have that pressure if they miss a quarter here and there. So I can totally see why that can be an unhealthy pressure if you take that journey. We have a couple of minutes left, so I just want to segue fast into the last part, which is about building in Europe. So very briefly, what do you say that Europe does better than the US when it comes to building startups?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I mean, we have I think like work-life balance is better in Europe, but I think we have a lot of stuff to work on in Europe. One thing I see is for example, I started off in Denmark. Now I live in Lisbon. and we have an entity here, we have an entity in Denmark, and we have remote employees all around Europe. And every employee is under different labor regulations. And for example, we were making one program for the employees.
Yeah.
And it was a bureaucratic nightmare to because each time you have you just have one remote employee in Belgium, and then you have to try to port it to Belgium law, and there's so many things. So I think, let me start by answering what Europe can do better. I think the EU Inc. I think is a step in the right direction, and I think making labor laws and making more equal across countries, and making the process, the entire process of setting up entities in different countries, handling employees, handling salaries, handling all that operational load, making that simpler would for sure make it easier to scale across Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the EU Inc. is something that I really hope for, but I have my doubts just because seeing that the politicians like to talk, but when it actually comes to implementation, it's it's a different matter. But yeah, definitely standardizing those type of things that you mentioned there, I think would be a huge benefit to Europe and for startups and businesses to better succeed and have less friction in all of the different jurisdictions and the regulatory schemes that they need to spend and waste time on that could have been done before building. So fair enough if you can't come up with something exactly that Europe does better than the US when it comes to building startups. I think, the US is of course kind of the best in the world of doing that with the talent they attract for Silicon Valley and the capital that is available. There's probably things that we can model, and then things that we shouldn't be modeling based on what the US is doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely there's a lot to learn, I feel still. I think they have a good advantage in the US with all the capital, and with also just the fact that they have the same language across so many states. They have a huge home market. They have I don't know about the specifics about setting up legal structures, but I imagine since it's within one federation, you can basically operate out of one entity across all states.
Yeah, I mean, for a while it's been the Delaware that people were incorporating in. That's been changing a bit. Even European companies were incorporating in Delaware a lot for the same benefits. I think that is changing to other states now, little by little, because of issues particular to the US, but which we won't get into here. So I think we need to close off now, and so I just have two more quick fire questions to you.
Sure.
Where do you want MindMyMind to be in 12 months' time?
In 12 months' time, I want us to be able to help more people, to be much more to have more stories of users who found it very useful and that helped them connect better with themselves and with people around them. I think that's the big thing.
Okay. And what's one thing you wish you had known before your first day as a CTO?
In mind, or back in the day?
Anything goes. What's the first big lessons that you wished you had learned before you started?
It's trust your gut and optimize for developer velocity, or optimize for speed. It's kind of you can always make technical choices all the time, and every choice have a trade-off. Okay, you might get slightly lower reliability but better speed. But I believe in the startup game, just always optimize as much as you can for speed, or for development speed. Yeah.
Trust your gut and optimize for speed.
Yeah.
On those words, we're going to be ending the podcast.